Hi everybody, this is Ross Goslin here, giving you another video on some of the tricks in the hobby craft. Today I'm going to be talking about these pesky vinyl / rubber tracks. We all know about them. Some of us cringe at the sight of them and run to the nearest shop or online store and buy aftermarket tracks such as Model Kasten and think was it the wet metal tracks from that name that I cannot pronounce that starts with an F, and a few other notable people. One of the things though is that they do run a high price tag, especially you start adding all the resources that you put into the model. Not all of us can afford that, and certainly I am one of them. So I just figured, hey, there's always a way to think outside the box. That's one thing I really enjoy about model buildings, is that you're not self-contained or constrained by just the instruction booklet. No, you can bust beyond that and go outside of it, and that's always been very exciting for my model building experience. So let's talk about these tracks. How can we get these to fit? This is a classic Tamiya half track vinyl tracks, and in the past I built these and didn't have too much of a problem with the tracks. They fit on pretty well. They were snug, and didn't have any of those problems of, like, when they're really tight, they warp, and inside the drive wheel, they get kind of scooped, and they just, sometimes you can't even bring them together. You have to either splice the tracks or just glue them with a gap, and hopefully you can bury it on a base of mud or something. So there are ways you can get around it, and the classic way is just adjusting either the idler wheel or the drive sprocket. This information, it's not new. This isn't stuff that just came up yesterday. The reference that I've used my whole life is Shepard Payne wrote this book, Modeling Tanks and Military Vehicles. It's been around for a long time. This book I got when I was a kid, and I still go through it sometimes. Is some of it a little dated? Some of it. Most of it is not. I think half the book, definitely every model builder learns those skills somewhere down the line. The other last quarter of the book, it's still it's on the frontiers of model building, vacuum forming and doing a lot of resin and scratch building, which is still that's a whole other category of model building, and I certainly don't have the warp drive capability on my model building craft to get there, and I don't think I really want to get into that. Vacuum forming it's pretty hardcore model building. That's like being like a bioengineer or something. Anyway, those are for those people. I'm not one of them. But I do enjoy watching them build some pretty amazing stuff. I've seen some guys build whole models just from scratch and vacuum forming. It's amazing. Anyway, back to tracks. So, here's the situation. I will just say this. If you know your track chassis is going to be tight and you're going to adjust it, do it before you build the model. In this case, I've already built the insides, the interior, and that just makes it harder. So when I go to cut and drill, I can't rely on gluing anything from the inside. So I'm already thinking, well, when I glue in the new sprocket piece, and I bring it back, it's going to be, well, it's not going to have as much support as if I had it and I can work on the inside. So that's just my word of wisdom there, is dry fit and do everything before. So that being said, what's the next part? What you're going to be doing is just taking your Dremel, and you just want to cut the sprocket. In this case I'm using this is my drive wheel. I'm going to just cut this off, and I'm going to use a piece of brass tubing, and I'm just going to bring it a few centimeters right to the back. And once I fasten it in and sand it and putty it, it's just going to look like it was already there. but there are a few tricks. One thing is when you're drilling, get in a straight line. You don't want to go in cockeyed, which is really hard without a drill press. You're going to have to eyeball it. There's not much you can do about that. So even if you do go in cockeyed, you can work around it. Hey, putty is amazing. It covers up all kinds of mistakes. Alright, but true, one thing though is alignment. Everything's got to be aligned properly. Here we got the teeth of the drive wheel, and what I did was I measured where the teeth align with the chassis system, and I found that it aligns just right here. So I took some my Sharpie pen and I marked on both sides where that teeth alignment is, so that when everything's set, I know where I want my drive wheel to be. Okay, so as far as that, if I had done this before I started building, one of the advantages is just to get a full-length piece of brass rod and actually make like a complete axle and drill right through, nice straight hole, and that way you don't have to really worry about all the measuring, because what you can do is just stick in one end, put it through, measure it, cut it, put the other side on. It's a lot easier and everything's a lot more straighter, but in this case I can't. I've already tried. I thought about if I could just drill through this kit, and what I noticed, I went through the manual, the instructions, there's a lot of internal plastic stuff inside there, and so like I'm just drilling. It's kind of like a lobotomy. And my thing is I have a lot of photo etch and everything. All that vibration, it's going to snap pieces right off. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to attach some pieces, glue it, and hope for the best. I already dry fitted the hole. I already started the one side here, and I already dry fitted it, and the tracks are nice. They're snug. They're not tight. There's a lot of give, and so that's going to be great, especially with these vinyl tracks, because we know why we don't like them. You know, they chip constantly. Painting these is a pain. You got to coat it with tons of Future, and then paint it, and then just don't touch it forever. So in that case, it works. So let's go find out. I'm going to do an actual live demo of going through the whole process. So. Alright, be a brief announcement, and I'll see you on the other side. Hi, alright, we're back. I had a little technical difficulty. I thought I was recording while I was using my Dremel and cutting out the drive sprocket pin, and clearly my video camera shut down and I wasn't recording, so we missed all that great footage of Russ cutting off that piece of sprue. Alright, so it wasn't too hard. I just took my cutting disc and I just cut it off. Don't go super flush like I did here on the first time around. I went and actually I kind of scooped a little bit of the chassis right here. Don't get too alarmed. A little bit of putty, a little sanding, it's going to cover everything, and no one's ever going to know the difference. Go. I cut off my piece, and I don't know where it is. Well, and it's gone. So again, use sanding paper or a I use a needle file here, and I just file everything, get all the little crumbs of plastic off. It's pretty smooth, and sometimes get like a little pick here and just kind of, there's a little bit of goop inside here, a little plastic stuff. And you're all set now. Now you gotta take your marker, and you need to, what I do is I have like a pilot where I'm gonna put my hole. I'm not gonna tell you how far to go. You want to bring it back just a little bit. You know, I say don't go any more than 6 centimeters. You don't want to make it so loose that it doesn't stay on. So a good rule of thumb that I've been using is I will just make my mark 1 pin back. that's the max, or maybe half. So here we go. I'll just mark it. And just start off with just a dot at first, because one problem you don't want is, again, I keep on talking about alignment. It needs to be straight back, not at an oblique angle, because then what's going to happen, if all of us who are into geometry, your drive wheel is going to either go a little lower or it's going to go a little higher. And my universal carrier, on one of the drive wheels, I have it high. So what happened was that it's really, the track is smashing right up against the fender, and you don't want that too much. So it's always a good rule of thumb, just make sure it's straight. If you need to use a straight edge as a guide, please do so. So I like where I got my hole. In this case, the fender is really high, so it's not going to make much of a difference. But again, you want to have symmetry, both sides being aligned. So I want to make sure I have a nice good hole, so when I drill, it's going to go in. Yeah, so there we go, something like that. Hope you can see it. I don't have a really good camera. Maybe the Santa Claus might get something for me in my stocking. That'd be nice. But if not, I'll just have to keep on using this. And so far, I think it works pretty good. Alright, so now we got a drill. What do we use for that? Drill bit. Just get one that matches the sprue. I actually saved the other one. So here it is, and there's my drill bit. And just, line it up. Every little sprue sprocket thing is going to be different size depending on the model kit. So you'll find a drill bit that fits. And then swap out the Dremel. So that'll be the next piece after our brief commercial break here. And we'll go into making a hole. Okay, we're back. We swapped out the sanding disc, and now we got our drill bit ready to go. So I'm going to give a few words on my thoughts on this next step. This step may be the most trickiest part because the chances of making a mistake are really high. But again, don't sweat it, don't worry about it, because you can always fix the mistake. And the mistake that I'm concerned about for all of us is whether or not we're coming in straight or not with the chassis. I did it on this side. I came out a little cockeyed. So when I put it in, I have a piece I can give you an idea of, that's pretty cockeyed. So what happened was, I hope you can see that. What I did is I went back in the drill and kind of reamed out a little bit and kind of brought it back. So now if I glue it just like that, it's going to be a little straighter. Obviously there's a lot of give. So once I have it in place, just glue it. And then yeah, there's a little bit of a gap, but what do we do with gaps? We fill them. Alright, here we go. So power the sucker up, and this will just take a little bit. Alright, we made contact. Whoa. I always do get a little startled when I work with drilling, because you're waiting for it to push through and you don't know how to react. Surprisingly, I just noticed there's a light going through the other side. I don't know if you can see it, which that could be helpful. I could actually put a straight rod through. I wasn't expecting that. So now we're gonna have to clean up a little bit. Yeah, wow, look at that. My needle file goes right through. I don't know if you can really see that at all, but the tip is right there. So that's interesting, because now it'll be a lot better, a lot stronger with a straight axle going through. So it's going to be something I'm going to have to think about, because I wasn't expecting that to be so. Alright, let's see, do a little test fit on the tubing. And as you can see, well, it just barely fits in, so I'm going to have to remount the hole a little bit more. Let's give that a go. Here's some rattling going on in there. I think it's these other axles. I don't know if you guys have all built this model, but some of these axle pieces all spin on the inside, or spin in general. So let's see what we got now. Alright, now it fits. And that's pretty good. It's pretty straight-ish. And also, when you're checking for something that's straight, you gotta check on more than just one axis. In this case, you may have to do a little bit more filing just to get it just where you want it. It's a lot of debris from that internal piece that I installed when I was building the chassis. Okay. So the next step, what's going to happen? Well, I have to make a choice. Do I want to use these short pieces on each side, or do I want to use a rod going straight through? That becomes a question. I got to make a decision on it. And once I do that, I'll bring it to that next piece of the video, and I'm going to install our pieces of the axle. So I hope that was informative. We'll be back after another intermission of sorts. Alright. Hey everybody, we're back. So it was pretty successful. Ran into a few snags, but I think it's a pretty good teachable moment with this alternative means of dealing with vinyl Trex. Okay, so what happened? I had my brass rod, and I inserted it through the shaft of the chassis, got my measurements, and I took out my cutting tool, my cutting disc, and I just cut it, and then trimmed it with some files, get it all nice and smooth and flush and straight, and had that thing cut. But I would want to say too, with regards to cutting, if you don't have a Dremel tool, you can get around it. You can use a vise and a hacksaw blade. This is a nice little quick hand job thing that works pretty good. And also with the plastic, you can also just use the old your razor saw, and those work just as fine. I just have a Dremel and I just use that. So once that brass rod was all cut and trimmed, I took my drive wheels, and I'm just going to use one of these wheels, but the hole, it just barely fit. So I just took my X-Acto blade tip and I just kind of scribed it just ever so lightly, just to open up just enough space so that it had a nice snug fit. And once that was in, we were into business. So here we go. This is what it looks like. I hope you can see it. As you can see, not too bad. Not too bad at all. It's got it's not tight. I'm not tight at all. All I gotta do now oops, dropped the wheel. I'm always doing that. All I gotta do is glue down and adjust the teeth and the tracks, glue them down, and they're gonna be okay. Now for the bad news. The bad news is the other side didn't turn out as good. I had some drill hole went a little too far to the rear, and so it rubs right up against the wheel next on the system line right here. So you can see that it rubs right. I actually had to grind down some of the teeth so that I had a fit. Yeah, it's a little discouraging, but I think it's also a great way of saying, hey, you know what, modeling's a craft. It takes time, and even people with great experience, you know, you're gonna make mistakes. I think with this particular kit that I was working on, I didn't plan on adjusting the tracks. So I think this, you know, considering the situation and the environment which I was building it under, you know, it happens. I think if I had built this right from the ground level, a lot of it would have been a little bit smoother operation. But I still think, you know, it's not that bad. Is it noticeable? Yeah, okay. It is. But I'm okay with it because, you know, again, model building is a journey. Not every single model we build is going to be, you know, the great showpiece. You know, that's just the way it is. And sometimes we just build models to learn and to experiment on. I think Norman LaJoy sometimes talks about that in his videos. So if he's watching this, hey, you know, a little shout out there. So you know what, it is. It's a learning experience, and you know, I got more of these kits in the old stash, so you know, it's okay. So I hope this was helpful, and you learned some other alternative means of doing things. This is kind of like basic scratch building, I guess. You know, I guess if you know, just some basic modification improvements to a model kit. So okay, I'm pleased with it. And those tracks, they're not tight. They just kind of sit there, and all I gotta do is glue them down. As far as the axle part now, because I do have those gaps, I'm probably gonna break down all the chassis system. I'll probably, when it's ready, glue it down and fill it and putty it, and you know, that's the chassis. And it can do what I did. I don't know if you could see it from the back side, but remember those styrene blocks that I had used to backfill my putty? Well, I just grinded them down with my Dremel. They were starting to just, you know, man, I didn't like it. So I ground them down and sanded it, and what I'm going to do is break down the chassis wheels and flip it over. When it's ready after painting, I'm just going to stipple it with some weathering mud. I think I'm going to try, I've been playing with Colorado One, Lewis. He, some of his videos he talked about using baking soda and stippling it with paint and other material, and kind of making some nice mud variation, modification of different wet and dry tones. Okay, well that's it for the my little tutorial on working with these vinyl tracks and kind of finding ways to work around the problem of all that tightness. So thanks for watching, and I just want to say that not every Tamiya track works like this or has this unfortunate situation. I've worked with a few Shermans, and I think it's the M3 Lee. I worked on one about a year ago, and there was no problems whatsoever with the tracks, and they fit perfectly fine and they were snug. So my recommendation is if you're working with these older vintage kits that have vinyl tracks, dry fit everything before you go into building up the chassis. Especially if you want to try out this technique of adjusting idler or drive wheels. I've never worked on an Italeri vintage tank, so I have no idea. I have seen their tracks. I think it was the T34 and the Panther. Those tracks are like slabs of bacon. They're really hard, and they're quartered, so you make 4 pieces and you stick them together.
I just didn't like it. My gut feeling was I didn't like them, so I tossed them. So you know what? Maybe I should try one of these older Italeri kits and do an update on this subject and see if they work, how they work. All right. So happy modeling and have fun, and I will see you around sometime. Thank you. Goodbye.